Good evening, welcome to Jargal Defacto Review, our weekly in-depth analysis of current affairs and news with our commentator Jargal Defacto.
Good evening.
Today is the last review in 2019 and we are highlighting three important events and topics, which is first one is amendment of the Constitution of Mongolia. The second one is Ulaanbaatar air pollution fight achievement, and the last one is grey list issue.
Because these three topics, why these three topics are important? First one is for at least next decade will determine our political life. New constitution has made some changes that we will follow. And second issue is if the government is making correct decisions and persisting on that, then we can make a change, in particular in the way we live, in life quality of Ulaanbaatar people. The third one is very important in the near future because staying in this grey list long is not good for the country, for the people. So it is our first job to get out of the list. It is a matter of improving governance quality.
The constitutional amendment draft was adopted by the Parliament at 6:02 p.m. on 14th of November 2019, when 63 members who are present unanimously approved it during the regular session. So our first question about this one is what kind of new amendments are being added related to the independence of judiciary system?
Before go to the judiciary system, very brief about what kind of amendments are made.
Right.
Our Constitution has 70 articles, in which 19 articles and 36 provisions were amended. That's why it is not new Constitution, it's amended constitutions. Now we still to go through presidential veto and the decision of the Constitutional Court, if those will happen. There is a less probability that those things will happen. And as you said, the Constitution will be valid from May 25th, 12 hours in 2020. Before to judge the constitutions or give evaluation what happened with the constitutions, we would like to see that from 4 points of view. One, whether these changes make the parliamentarian democracy stronger or not weaker. Second, what is changing with the executive power. Third, judiciary power. The fourth is the local administration. So once we talked about this judicial system, you asked, let's talk about what kind of changes happened in the judicial system, by the way, which is the most critical points for Mongolian democracy at the moment, where the people find we need serious reform in judicial branch of the power. Two things. One, they have changed a bit structure. Before we had the court at the level of city, IMAG, and SUM and district, and in between SUMs. But now we have a more broader, in the US system it's called circuit court. So that in a district, if it's very small, then now it's a bigger circuit court where the court system can work. The second thing is the General Council of Court. There are some changes happened. Now, General Council of Court has 10 members. 5 of them will be elected from lawyers. Another 5 will be open. The lawyers judges can put their names and they will be selected. And the head of this council will be elected among these 10 members. And the rule of procedure of this council will be defined by separate law. And there's one addition, which is about 49.6 new addition. It was on the 49.5. Now a new addition, which says the Judge Disciplinary Committee, which is the organ to keep a responsibility with the judges, where if they have any mistakes, violations But the way how it works will be also separate law. In general, there will be some 30 laws changed as a result of this new Constitution's amendment.
So, were there any amendments about strengthening the parliamentary system, parliamentary democracy system?
I think that's the main strength of these amendments, which were long waited. But at least the Parliament will discuss, Parliament will have a sessions not like 50 working days as today's per session for fall sessions or autumn sessions. Instead of 50, they will have 75. And the majority of all issues will be decided by 2/3 of the majority, which means 2/3 of the Parliament members. Majority means they're more than 50% of the Parliament members. Votes will be open, and there will be a possibility to call back if the Parliament member is connected with criminal cases. There will be self-dispensing of the Parliament. There is a new law which gives a little bit more clear conditions than before. And also 2/3 of the Parliament decided that they should be dispensed, then there will be so. And also another thing is Prime Minister nomination. It used to be within 45 days. The next one is if the Parliament is dismissed, then the current one is to announce within 10 days new Parliament election, and within 60 days to organize it. And until the new members come, the current Parliament will be in the force. There are different approach to the executive power. There, the Prime Minister position have way strengthened. Instead of Prime Minister only, by the way, before that, if today 18 ministers are all Parliament members, the next one will be only 4 plus Parliament. Prime Minister can be a Parliament member. The remaining are not to be Parliament member. In that way, we are releasing the double daily issues. Well, not completely, but one step forward. Now the Parliament Prime Minister will have a full right to nominate, dismiss all cabinet members, which is substantially new changes. Another change to strengthening our parliamentarian democracy is the permanent committees in the Parliament may create, about that permanent committees, they can create a temporary committee of the Parliament, kind of inquiry in the UK Parliament, a system where on the issues that of major concern of the public, they can create this kind of the inspection temporary committee of the Parliament, and that should include the minority in the Parliament members. Next one is on the strengthening democracy would be the referendum. A referendum can be organized as before, but on the issue of sovereignty and territorial integrity, there will be no referendum at all. Another thing is minimum amount of members of political parties to be 28,000 or 1% of the voting electorate, but that provision will be valid from 2028. So it gives 2-3 election chances for smaller parties to have more members. And most importantly, the whole bottleneck of our democracy was the transparency of the financing of political parties, political campaign. But first time in the constitution of the country, it is specifically specified that political parties are to be transparent, their property and revenues, expenses are to be publicly available, the information. So, and also this will be the base for financing of political parties by the state. That's the major things happened in this constitutions.
So, could you tell us about the amendments related to the natural resources and economy?
Yes, and there is a particular new provision about how natural resources are to be kind of result of natural resources use come to the people. It says that first of all this the land other than people owns the base of the land, the forest, water resources, animals. Before it was only state property. Now it's called state and public property. More confusing name, but it is by the way how it is to be used. Before when it was just state-owned, state property, then the state people, the government people think that they can do anything with all the property. Now it is they are restricting their use. It is also to be public property. Also, there is a substantial change which says that state policy on the use of natural resources to be long-term and is to be based on the long-term development policy of the country. And the wealth coming from these resources to be used, centralized in the sovereign national wealth fund and directed to the just consumption of the people. The other thing was very interesting here was about the strategic deposits. The value of strategic deposits of the country, if you take from the beginning to the end, majority of the wealth is to belong to public. That's the major new provisions about mining resource of the country.
February 2018, the government of Mongolia made a decision to ban usage of raw coal and promoted usage of refined fuel to reduce air pollution problem. And to enforce this, transporting raw coals into the city for fuel was prohibited on the 15th of May this year. In the frameworks of this, drafts to free refined fuel from value-added tax was presented. So about this one is, can the current government and the municipality of Ulaanbaatar introduce refined coal or brick coal into the regular usage of the people?
It depends on the price. There is a plant which produces the coal briquette from Tavan Tolgoi coal. They bring there and they produce here. But now the issue is the price and the value. If this value per money, are equivalent of what the coal costs, then people will more or less buy it. If it is a little bit higher, because it's an issue of how long the briquettes can be burned, right? Coal, it's, for example, you put at night and in the morning it goes per basket of coal.
But the quality of the coal is in question. Most of the people are complaining that it is not, it's not producing much heat, but it's just
You mean that briquette doesn't produce the heat compared with the coal that used to have. So let me give you some statistics. Smoke problem is persistent in this country. Who are producing smokes? Almost 200,000 chimneys from the Ger areas, okay, 200,000. And this is the main source of the air pollution in Ulaanbaatar. These people, who are these people? These are the people which has very interesting statistics. Here. The people in Ger districts spend 7 times more money for heating than the people living in apartments through this coal, individual heating, etc. Yet, 58% of Ulaanbaatar workforce live in this Ger district. So you can imagine that almost 60% of workforce are heating themselves with 7 times more cost than people living in housing. And poverty level in Gerd districts at the level of 38%, where by the country it's 29%. So if these people can afford buying those called briquette, that's the issue. If they can do it and they find it's comparable with the coal price that used for whole winter, then it will work, provided that it gives the same heat level than the coal.
So raw coal is banned. And will the government, provoke the illegal sale of raw coal? Because
again, we will see that when the cold weather comes within maybe 2-3 weeks. Then, if the people are happy with those briquettes they buy and heating, and then they have the same heat per value per money, then probably people will be using it. If not, if they need to pay more money, now there is even a proposal of the government to release the VAT tax on those briquettes. So otherwise it is increasing them 10%. So if it's released, maybe it can help them to be more competitive with their ordinary coal. If it is not, the people will try to buy coal by all means, either from Nalech, which is 45 kilometers distance from Ulaanbaatar, where the reserve is finished, but people illegally producing coal there, or Baganur, 150 kilometers away, the most largest coal in the country. But people will find the way how to bring in the speculate coal.
Right.
So we will see. We cannot say it now, but again, it will depend on the price level and availability of that briquette.
So, the United Nations presented a research report on Mongolia about the expenditure and lost opportunity caused by the air pollution. And so, what do you highlight from this research?
There was a UN report on air pollution fight of Mongolia, as you are referring to, and that report says that the PM particles went down from 2012 to 2015. Then it started to increase from the end of 2015. Early the spring of 2016, it had increased all the way now. That's interesting observation. In spite of all this spending we made from year to year on combating that air pollution, and plus. The report says that this air pollution became one of the 10 risk groups,
Cause of death.
10
Main
causes of death in Mongolia. The third very interesting statistic is made. It turned out that Mongolians spend about $645 million a year to combat air pollution, which is around 1.6 or 7 million dollars a day that this poor country spends against air pollution. And this is, on the other hand, also lost opportunity. With this money, we can create so many other kindergarten schools, right? So that's very interesting statistics they made. And Mongolia is getting a lot of international aid to combat air pollution. But finally, the most effective way of combating air pollution is making affordable housing for those poorer areas of the Ulaanbaatar city. And somehow all construction companies here building very expensive apartments, even for average American, it's very expensive apartments in Ulaanbaatar. So the point is, how to get affordable housing made and sold or rented to those people who are living in Gerd districts today. This is the agenda number one. Without affordable housing, we cannot complete combating air pollution.
The annual meeting of the Financial Action Task Force, an independent intergovernmental organization against money laundering and terrorism financing, was held in Paris from 13th to 18th of October. During this meeting, they have announced that Mongolia has officially been grey-listed. Mongolia was grey-listed in 2013 before, and this is the second time the country has been included in the grey list. Now, our question about this one is, what is Financial Action Task Force and why does they grey list countries?
Well, this organization was created in 1989 at the G7 summit to fight against corruption, money laundering, and financing terrorism. And they have created the organization called the Financial Action Task Force. And they recognize the threat to the banking system and the financial institutions, and the European Union joined them, and 8 countries were there, 8 jurisdictions, and nowadays there are 39 members countries in this organization. Mongolia is not member of AFATF itself, but Mongolia is a member of its original structure called Asia Pacific Group. Mongolia became member in 2004. Since that, Mongolia is trying to implement the 40 recommendations that this organization have introduced to its members, and which mostly includes a very comprehensive plan of action needed to fight against money laundering. Mongolia, while being member of the Asian Pacific Group, Mongolia had a report. They have a mutual monitoring report, each country by other countries, called peer countries. And we had a substantial, very comprehensive report in September 2017 called Anti-Money Laundering and Counter-Terrorist Financing Measures, Mongolia Mutual Evaluation Report, which is available on the website of that Asian Pacific Group, which unfortunately was not very much broadly available in Mongolian in our society for the last 2 years. It's bad because the society could do a lot if they knew it before.
So Mongolia was grey-listed in 2013 before. What happened and why were we grey-listed again?
Well, in this report, Mongolia is exposed to a range of money laundering threats and vulnerabilities, higher risk predicate offenses, fraud, environmental crimes, tax evasion, and corruption. Moderate risk threats include drug offenses, smuggling, organized crime, crime against the banking regulations, theft and burglary, and risk from foreign proceeds. That's what the report says. Indeed, it says, the proceeds generated from these predicate crimes are laundering in Mongolia and abroad. Within Mongolia, proceeds are mainly used to purchase real estate, vehicles, machinery, and other consumer items, and also laundering using legal persons, including in the construction industry. In relation to corruption, bank accounts of family members are mainly used for the receipt of monies, which are then transferred to foreign bank accounts and offshore accounts, financial institutions. In some cases, these funds have been returned to Mongolia using the banking system. And Mongolia, cooperation in coordination on proliferation of financing in Mongolia is absent. That's the reasons why Mongolia is grey-listed. And it was reported in September 2 years ago from now, but there were out of 40 recommendations, half was done, but the current government have done substantial works, and 15 of them is implemented. Now 5 out of 40 recommendations are missing in Mongolia, and 4, there is also outcome report. And there are 11 items to check, and Mongolia is missing 4. So that's why Mongolia is listed.
So what happens to the countries that have been grey-listed, internally and both externally? You mentioned before that first of all, dollar prices will increase.
Certainly. Well, we should know two things. There is a blacklist and grey list. Blacklist country, Iran and North Korea. And all transactions with these two countries, with any institutions, are forbidden or sanctioned in the world. With the grey-listed countries, they don't give particular recommendations to partners, possible whoever is having relations with these grey-listed countries, but they ask them to have into consideration when they have a risk assessment about this country. That is already a signal for, in particular, AAA companies, banks, who are very careful about this kind of transactions, operations. It may take longer time for transferring money to and from Mongolia, because it will take longer time to check about this legality of those money. And they are, out of this 4 outcome reporting provisions, we have 3 is not done so far. It was 4 1 month ago. The missing one, the Mongolians have done during one thing. It is we had some 250 or so Korean workers, North Korean workers, they were left the country. So we now 3 missings. That is, first, we're not controlling enough all banking institutions. First, secondly, we are not acting upon on the doubtful transactions. For example, Mongolia is not controlling properly the gold production, smuggling. Clear example is if there is a royalty 2.5%, 20 tons come, at least gold comes to Mongolia. If it is becoming 5%, like it happened this year, then the 20 tons are disappearing through the border. And recently they found out a few kilos of gold smuggling here and there. But you can imagine how much tons go through the border smuggling. The fourth is nobody is punished in this country. Nobody got the related dissuasive, the related corresponding punishment for corruptions and other crimes, and which is clearly shown in case of arrests of several high-ranking officials, and nothing had happened. They have released, and there was also arrest of several heads of the state-owned companies, commercial banks, but all are released, and no explanation is coming. So Mongolian judicial system is not able to proceed through court all these crimes.
Thank you for watching. It was the last review in 2019. Thanks for your attention.
Thank you very much for being with us in this great year of 2019. We wish you great success, prosperity, happiness in your life, and see you next year. Happy New Year 2020.